record. We always start the recording late because I forget, but hopefully by the time we hit this slide, I remember. And again, so we are recording this session. We'll record it for at least the first half hour. If you folks have no objection to recording it during the general discussion, we'll continue the recording. So whether the recording is a half hour long or an hour long, that will be posted on the District 7850 YouTube channel. I will send you that link as well, but if the link doesn't work for you, simply go on YouTube and Google Rotary District 7850 and the Zoom recording will come up and you can watch that or share that with another president-elect who missed our session tonight. So quick recap of workshop number 2. We did cover a lot of content. We talked about who we are as a district. We navigated our website so that folks could take a look at what's available in terms of resources for you as president-elects and president of your Rotary clubs on the District 7850 website. We talked about the role of the district governor and other resources, and we had District Governor Mike Carrier here to talk about his role as district governor. We had district governor nominee who will follow me as district governor, Susan Sherry. She talked about our District 7850 strategic planning initiative. We do want to make sure that we have a new and improved and updated strategic plan in place for our District 7850, and we'll be working on that over the next 6 months or so. We also had Eric Deneau join us. Eric is a past district governor, and he talked about the membership committee for our district. So we need to focus as a district on membership over the coming year or two. We need to focus very intently on that goal to increase our membership and have quality members. Quality Rotarians. And so he talked a little bit about that, the membership committee and how we plan to do that. And then finally, we finished off with district opportunities and committees. So as president-elects, you're going to get to know the district and other Rotary resources quite well during your year. After your year concludes, you may want to participate in the district on that district level, the next level up. And we're hoping you'll think about that. And there are a number of committees that we would love to have your passions, your energy, and your enthusiasm for Rotary to benefit. So keep your eyes and ears open for both your own opportunities as well as other individuals in your clubs. If there are folks that you think would lend talents and strength to the district, please let me know. And I'd be happy to contact them and invite them onto a committee or some other district role. Just a heads up, our district secretary, Bruce Pact, has told us that he is concluding his very many year tenures on July 1st of this year. So we are looking for a new district secretary. So if there's anyone that you know who might be interested in that position or you want to talk to me about that position, please let me know. And then a reminder, in our first session, we talked about My Rotary. That is the Rotary International site. And it also has a wonderful learning center on that site. And we talked about how to access that learning center and the fact that there is a president's-elect learning plan that you can take and you should take prior to the Northeast President-elect's training on March 4th and 5th. So please, it takes about a total of 4.5 hours. You can start and stop as you have availability in your schedule. So please consider getting on My Rotary in the Learning Center and taking that learning plan. It'll prepare you well for your presidential year. So let's see, all of a sudden this isn't working. Okay, so what are we covering today? Well, I'm so pleased because I spoke way too much last session. We have 2 individuals who are joining us today, Paul Richardson and Courtney Jarecki. We are talking about the best practices of visual marketing, and Paul will be covering that topic, and we'll be talking about best practices of social media, and Courtney will be covering that for us. And when we conclude, we're going to have our open mic. So for the last 25 or 30 minutes, I encourage you to ask questions of Paul and Courtney, to pick their brains and make sure that you take advantage of their knowledge and experience so that you can best maximize the visual marketing and social media promoting of your Rotary clubs. Rotarians need to be visible. We need to show our communities what we do for the communities. And it's a great opportunity for you to confer and consult with these 2 experts to figure out how to maximize those opportunities for you and for your club. So I'm going to start by introducing Paul Richardson. Paul Richardson heads up Storyworks, that is his own company. It's a 32-year-old company that provides marketing services to companies and nonprofits with a particular emphasis on photography and videography. Clients range from Russia's finest symphony orchestra to a Vermont baker, from music festivals in Florida and California to the country's oldest manufacturer of maple, to the country's oldest manufacturer of maple sugaring equipment. I'm assuming that's in Vermont, Paul. When not capturing headshots or fine architectural images, Paul can be found running, writing, translating Russian short stories, or imbibing single malt scotch. So Paul, we're so happy to have you here. Take it away.
There we go. If I can find the right buttons, I can make things work. Good. So Caroline asked me to speak about visual marketing today. So I'm going to run you through a few minutes here about that. We'll begin talking about who we are and why we should be talking about this, what visual marketing and marketing more generally is, and then how that can be put to use for your chapter. And then there'll be questions at the end. We say we'll put those after Courtney is done speaking as well. So first of all, what about us? Well, we got started in 1990. I was living and working in Russia at the time. We founded one of the first Soviet Western joint ventures in printing and publishing, and I met a fellow from Vermont, and together we founded the company that became Storyworks. It was a publishing company publishing things about Russia. We did that for pretty much exclusively for about a decade, and then starting in about 2000, we started turning that publishing knowledge to help other companies and advising them on things of marketing and marketing themselves better in print and online. And then in 2008, we kind of made a shift again to focus almost exclusively on photography and videography as the key means of marketing and helping those companies. So those are the services we're providing to them. And we help a wide variety of companies from, as Caroline said, sugar makers and sugar equipment makers to the people who deal with the fallout of sugar, to fine restaurants and bakeries, and the people who deal with the fallout from that, and everything from small businesses to farms, but the people that put food on the table, and then the people who negotiate around tables. And we do a lot of work with nonprofits as well, and I really enjoy that because they really understand the importance of storytelling in terms of getting their message across and convincing people of the value of what they do for their communities. And we just love taking images of people. As Caroline said, one of my favorite parts of my practice is doing headshots. I love doing corporate headshots of people, individual branding headshots, as well as just photography of portraits, environmental portraits, you call, of people in their place. So that's what we do, and how we came to the whole marketing thing. So now I want to talk about what marketing is, because that's what we're here for. I like always starting this off with a quote from Seth Godin, who I think is a great philosopher about all things marketing. And that's, marketing gets kind of a bad name for what it is shilling for this or that. But it really is about making change, about changing the culture and convincing people about things that are important, whether it's, product, services, or causes. But to get a bit about the structure about what marketing is really about, I see the overall sales, or whether you're not selling something, but maybe you're selling an idea process, as a funnel. And the outer kind of band of that funnel is branding. This is the part of the process when you're interacting with somebody and you're talking to them and you're communicating what their expectations are going to be when they interact with your company, with your organization, and so forth, the promises that you are making. It's about setting up the boundaries of your tribe. This is who we are. This is our tribe. This is what we are like. And I think of it in terms of, if you think of like Main Street, the branding is really, the storefront sign. It's the stuff in the window, communicating what you are all about. Marketing is the next layer in on that, and that's really just storytelling. That's telling people about what's going to happen when they do interact with the brand. It's talking about, these are the stories of transformation that the people have had when they've interacted with us in the past. These are the conversations. This is where you have conversations with and interact with your potential clients. And really, it's about getting those people in the door. They've walked by the senior door. They've been attracted by the branding. Marketing is really what you do to get them in the door. And the final piece of the puzzle is selling. And this is once they're in the door, you're talking to them about features, you're talking to them about benefits, and you're trying to close the deal. Now, the reason I talked about this is not a marketing 101 class, but it's just to underscore the fact that marketing is just one piece of the puzzle. And if you're talking about visual marketing, again, that's just one piece of the puzzle. You could be doing visual branding. You could be doing visual selling. So like an image, say a product photo, bottle of something on white. That's a selling photo. That's not necessarily marketing. A picture, a lifestyle picture of, someone running in Nike shoes. That's branding perhaps, but marketing is more about storytelling. It's about talking about what happens when people engage with the brand. And I feel very strongly that needs to be based on stories. And I feel that's for three reasons. First of all, stories are a sense-making mechanism. We, for thousands of years, have used stories to communicate things between us, because stories, they really put things in an order so that the brain doesn't have to work so hard to understand what else is going on. And we've been using, as I say, stories for tens of thousands of years to communicate the most important things. And that's what the next important thing about stories is they convey really vital information, like don't go into that cave, there's a bear, right? So, and then finally, the most important thing about stories is they tap into emotions. Good stories really just tap into feelings and make a connection between people. And I've kind of one of the hardest things I've had to learn over the last 20, 30 years is that people don't make decisions rationally, whether in business or otherwise. They make them largely based on emotions and irrational considerations, and stories tap into that, and stories therefore respond to that. So that's why they are an effective way to market. So what kinds of stories do you want to be telling? Well, first of all, you want to be telling stories of transformation. In this 10,000 years history we have of telling stories, we've developed a common arc of the way we expect stories to be told. We expect there to be a hero, he or she goes through a trial, and they're transformed in the end. This is kind of the general arc. There's a lot of other subtleties and so forth, but we expect and enjoy stories of transformation, and that's key. We expect stories to be clear, concise, and relatable. If somebody has a long, droning on story, you're not going to listen. If it's going to be clear and concise and it makes the point you expect, that's going to be an effective story. Finally, I, of course, believe, being biased this way, that stories should be visually communicated, because we are just wired for images. We as a species are just wired for images. Half of our brain is taken up by image processing. And that just really speaks to how important visual stimuli are to us as a species. Photography stops time and focuses the attention away, and it communicates so much more than can just words. And in fact, when they're next to words, they really enhance those words, and they enhance the ability for people to communicate and understand. The interesting thing about images is that they enter your long-term memory, whereas text only goes into your short-term memory. So when this presentation is over, you're going to forget all the words you saw on the screen, but you might remember some of the images, because those will have dove into your long-term memory. And this is a statistic I always like to share, because I think it's really underscores a lot of what we're talking about here, that people remember just a little bit of what they hear, a little bit more of what they read, but most of what they see and experience. And that's where visual marketing really comes into play. So all this said, long introduction, how can this be put to use for a chapter such as yours, or as Rotary? First of all, I would say lean on the Rotary brand. When we talked about those three different areas of the selling process, I don't think you need to spend much time on the brand. It's one of the world's most well-known, well-respected brands. You don't need to be doing that kind of use of images there. You should be focusing instead on the marketing. So do marketing, not branding. And that means storytelling, not necessarily setting the parameters or talking about who your tribe is. So spend time thinking about, do my images focus on these important things that really help visual storytelling work? And the first thing is transformation. Are these stories about transformation? Are they stories about how we help people achieve certain things, do certain things? Are we focusing on the right hero? Too often marketing focuses on, a company will focus on itself as the hero. Never do that. I mean, you think about, you go to a dinner party, are you going to want to hang out with the person who stands around talking about themselves all the time? Or are you going to want to hang out with the person who's talking about interesting stories and of transformation they've heard in their community? That's what you need to do. As an organization, yeah, I know you got to put up those pictures of holding up the big 3-foot long check. That's important to show that, but that's really got an audience of one, the donor. You want to have stories, photographically sorted stories that focus on what that check did, not what that check is. That's great to show the check, but also show what the check did. And finally, and this will segue into what Courtney's going to be talking about, is to use images to incite conversations, to have engagement, because that's really going to just make those images just reside in people much better. And for those of you who are expecting practical tips about photography from this, that wasn't really kind of the brief I was given. I can just actually say photography is actually really super easy. There's only 3 things involved: lighting, composition, and timing. But of course, the problem is each of those have about 100 different variables. So that gives you about 1 million different ways in which things can impact an image. So I can't really give you some specific tips there, other than just kind of the general ones. Get close. As the great photojournalist Robert Capa said, if your pictures aren't good enough, you aren't close enough. So get in close, not too close, because with cell phone cameras, that makes things look weird. But get up close, show faces, and make sure faces are lit well and in focus. And that's the best thing you can do to tell stories, because people gravitate towards faces. And other things being equal, if you can do that, if you see that you've got an important event coming along, know when to ask for help. Consider that if you've got something that's really important to your chapter and it's an important event, it's far less expensive than you probably think to bring in a professional to do good event photography, or something that can be really used to your benefit. And if that doesn't work, you can always try to get a photographer to join your chapter. So those are my tips. I hope they're somewhat helpful. And I'll stop sharing, and I guess we're going to start sharing Courtney's next after you introduce her, eh?
Thank you, Paul. That was really very interesting in such a short period of time. You covered a great deal. So thank you so much. And it is a perfect time, of course, to segue to Courtney. And so we will do that. So I'm so pleased as Paul's partner in crime here tonight to introduce Courtney Jarecki. Courtney Jarecki is the owner of Yancey Red Social Media Agency, which creates social media strategy that is engaging, metric-driven, and creative. Courtney works in all industries and on all social media platforms. When not creating content that livens up brands, Courtney's the pack leader to a home full of dogs, cats, a 10-year-old, and a husband. So Courtney, we're so happy to have you. And I think that Paul will be sharing his screen again, and you can take it from there.
Thank you all so much for having me tonight. So I'm in my living room in Milton, Vermont, and this is where I work as a social media manager for businesses, personal brands, and nonprofits. And I've been in the social media industry since 2011, and Yancey Red, that's my logo, that's my branding that Paul was kind of talking about when he was speaking of branding and then marketing. So what I do is I help businesses tell their stories on social media. And social media is Facebook, it's Instagram, it's LinkedIn, it's kind of sort of Google. It's really any kind of platform or social media channel that you log into and you post a picture about yourself or you read about someone else, and it's personal and business. And within that social media, there's 2 kinds of content. There's the organic kind. So if you're on Facebook, that means you're typing in, a picture of what you had for dinner because you cooked a really good chicken. And then there's paid ads. Those are these ads that come up if you were talking about needing a new pillow and suddenly there's an ad for a pillow. Those are the paid ads. And I work within both of those realms as a social media manager. So every Rotary Club wants to be using social media to increase engagement with the public, gain the attention of current and future Rotarians, and celebrate your projects and good works. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm within all the social media platforms. I'm going to specifically focus on Facebook and Instagram, because those are the two social media platforms where your district's clubs are predominantly on. And I'm going to briefly talk about storytelling specifically to social media, engagement, which Paul had mentioned, tagging accounts, using hashtags, and time management to make this all happen. So, but the most important part of kind of what I'm going to talk about are going to be your questions at the end, because social media is a conversation. It's a conversation tonight, but more importantly, it's a conversation on those social media channels. And so each of your clubs has unique needs on social media, you know, depending on where you're located, projects that are coming up, events that are coming up. And so your questions that you may ask tonight can help other people too. So definitely write it down. And if you could do the next slide, Paul. All right, keep it interesting. What does that even mean? So Paul was talking about social or storytelling, because that's the heart of marketing, right? And it's the energy also in social media. It's what you want to be doing on social media. And Paul talked about how to keep those stories interesting, you know, focus on where the spirit of the projects, the people within the projects, the good works. And it's what the storytelling, the interesting storytelling is what keeps people coming back to social media. And it's what will keep people coming to your Facebook and your Instagram pages to see what you've done and what you're doing next. And I know not everyone feels that they're good storytellers, or that people can feel a little shy around the idea of putting themselves out there on social media. So what I'm going to do tonight is just talk you through it so it feels doable. Next slide, Paul. All right, social media is social. I mentioned that in the beginning. So there's no such thing as set it and forget it. That's like not a real thing in social media or in marketing. And when I say social media is social, it means that if you're posting something, you want to be engaging with the people who could potentially see that post and with the people who have engaged with that post. And we'll talk about engagement a little more, but think about social media as like active listening. Like you want to show people that you're paying attention to what they're doing and how they're communicating with your club's pages. And so you may have heard of the word engagement on social media. And so in real life on social media, what that means is that Rotarians are liking and commenting posts from their clubs, from other clubs in their district, and from the people and businesses in their communities. And this is done from an authentic place. It's not something that you just do because you have to do. It's something that comes from the spirit of why you're in Rotary. So next club, or page, not club. So I have two posts here. Don't worry about the font or what it actually says. I know that the font's like really small. So these are two posts from the Rotary Club of Barrie. This is their Facebook page. And I chose these two post examples of good storytelling because they're showing the positive impact that Rotary is having in Barrie, and they're showing it in a couple different ways. So this first one, the gift boxes, those are donations of winter coats, of essentials. And the second photo or post is a donation of time. And both of these are showing the care in the community that Rotary is doing on a daily basis. Because Rotary is so much more than fundraising. You know, it's about helping people in the local and the global communities. And telling a story on social media can be as simple as that, as posting a picture and then having a little description, whether it's something in a lot of detail, like we donated 150 coats, here's where they're going, or something a little more general that's a little more not giving as much detail, like just the donation of time, of good community service. And if you can go to the next one, Paul. So when I talk about engagement, this is what it means. You'll see this like, there's a thumbs up, it's a like, there's a comment option, and there's a share. And these 3 forms of engagement are on every Facebook post. And so if your club has a post that they've shared and you're on Facebook, you can like that post, you can write a comment on that post, or you can share that post to your own page. If you're following other clubs within your district, you can support them by doing the same. And as whomever is managing the Facebook pages for your club, if there's a comment on a post, your job as an admin is to respond to that. That's that social part. That's that two-way conversation. You don't want to leave comments unacknowledged, whether it's you're just liking them or you're commenting back to them. That's how the dialogue is happening on social media. And you may have heard about the algorithms on social media. Those are the mysterious ways that Facebook works or Google works. And they're complicated and they're ever changing. But what the algorithm always wants to do is reward posts that have engagement. So if this post from the Berry Club is getting a lot of comments or likes or shares, Facebook is going to say, oh, this must be important. I want more people to see it. So we'll show that kind of post to a wider audience. And that's how you kind of get the ball rolling on social media. Next slide. Okay, so this is Instagram. This is a fantastic post from your district Instagram account. And so Instagram is a little different than Facebook. Instagram is all visual, so every post has to have a photo, and it's a little easier to build an audience on Instagram. So this is a polar dip. I think it's from last year. Yeah, it's from 2020. You know, everyone loves a good polar dip story. They love looking at the pictures. They love, you know, seeing what people have to say because it's fun. It's exciting. It's a good story. So for this kind of post, if you're on Instagram and if your club is on Instagram, then you want to be engaging with that. You'll see a heart. That's the Instagram's equivalent of the like, the thumbs up. You'll see the little comment bubble. You can comment on there and you can tag accounts on there. So this account, some details of this post, you'll see it says Elmore State Park. That's a location that's saying where this took place. So that's a great thing to do when you're location-based storytelling here. And they used something that's at the bottom. You'll see a hashtag. It says Synergy 7850. So if you want to go to the next slide, Paul. Hashtags are a thing to be used on Instagram. They are a tool to gain a wider audience. So a hashtag is simply a word with no spaces that has the pound sign in front of it. And your district has hashtags that they could be using and that they are using. So all of these hashtags that you see here, I've done some research on, and they're all like verified good hashtags for Rotary for your clubs to be using. So there's the Rotary 78050. There's a specific one to this post that they could have used Polar Plunge 2022 if that's happening this year. You can be very general in your hashtags, like your location, Vermont, New Hampshire, Quebec. You can also be general in your actions of the hashtag. So leadership, service to others, people of action. And then you can be very specific about what you might be doing within that post. Sorry. My voice is totally going out right now. I apologize. Okay, next slide. So, to recap, you want to tell a story by keeping it interesting. Social media is social, so you want to be engaging with others. You want to be using those hashtags and tagging accounts, and you want to make time. So that's the harder part with social media, is to make the time. And that is just identifying a couple minutes every week to do these posts, whether it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes, to just dedicate that time. And that's all it takes to really start building the momentum behind social media. I apologize. I was sick last week. My voice is totally giving out right now, but I will answer all of your questions.
Thank you, Courtney. I really appreciate it. I know you're recovering from us about. So thank you so much. So let's open up the floor to questions. Just want to make sure that you all have a chance to ask Paul and Courtney the questions that make sense from your perspective as presidents-elect. I know, Nicole, that you had a question, so why don't we start with you?
Thank you so much. So Courtney, that was great. And also to Paul, I really enjoyed both of your presentations. I'm going to take it, I'm going to steal some of it and share it with other circles, as well as the Barry Rotary Club, which is my club that I represent. My question, and now my voice is going, you're not alone, Courtney. My question has to do with how we might be able to use a front porch forum specifically. You know, in Vermont, we have a really wonderfully effective front porch forum in every town, actually. We have one. And, you know, there is the Facebook group, you know, there are people that pay attention to Facebook and to Instagram. And then there's people that really are more like front porch forum folks, like that's more their speed. And I'm wondering, one, is it appropriate, or would it be considered an abuse to use front porch forum more consistently as a way to get the same kind of messages out? Obviously, we wouldn't be able to necessarily, you know, link photos, but we could have links that could, you know, link them to our Facebook pages or whatnot. Would that be appropriate? And do you have any best practice suggestions for doing so, if that even, you know, irregularly or not as consistently, if we use that to some degree as a way to get the word out about what's happening and what impact we're having?
So I'm not 100% familiar with their terms of service in terms of their what they're limiting, but within my own front porch forum community, I have seen people, you know, talking about events and community things. So I would suggest looking it over to make sure that you wouldn't be in violation of anything like that. And then I think it's a completely appropriate thing to announce any fundraising drives you have in terms of like donations and community events. I think that's completely okay. And yeah, there is a huge Vermont's Front Porch Forum is such a unique gift to Vermont. I mean, it's this amazing, and it is social media. It is an amazing network that doesn't exist anywhere else like it does in Vermont. And so I think the more you can use that, you should, because like you said, so many people are on there.
Wonderful. Paul, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think you're right on point there, Courtney. I think they do have some pretty low cost advertising, as far as I understand. I think it's only $100 a month or something like that. I would think, and maybe Courtney can give feedback on this, I think you'd actually even be more effective if you could get members to put posts up about things instead of them being official announcements. So anything that sounds more like an authentic voice from your average person instead of being a press release is going to probably get more traction. And then I know the Front Porch Forum does have limits on how many times you can post a month if you're a business. I don't know if, given what I see happening in Montpelier, I think there are not limits on some people as private individuals. So I don't know what it is a terms of service you'd want to check out, but
thank you both so much.
It's like what social media was before social media back in the, was
Right.
the well and all this
Yeah.
listservs and stuff. Yeah, that's really what it is.
Thank you. So let's go to Lise and then Spence.
So So I was hoping that part of the marketing discussion tonight was going to be information about where to find product that is marketed by Rotary. In other words, things that already have been produced that we could just purchase to make available to our members or for an event. Like
so I
things
can,
like the
Lisa,
hats, the shirts and all that.
Lisa, I can answer that. Russell Hampton has an exclusive Rotary contract. So if you Google Russell Hampton Rotary, you'll come up with their catalog, which gives you every possible clothing, you know, anything you can imagine.
So can you put the link in the chat? So
I
that,
will. I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lise. Spence.
Yeah, I have a question for Paul. When he was talking about, he was going really fast and I was scrabbling to keep up here and make some notes. And you were talking about stories. You had 3 elements. You said they need to be sense making, they convey vital information, they appeal to the emotions. And I think you said something about not the response being not rational. And I don't think you meant irrational, but you meant that you're appealing to some part of the personality other than the rational part of the brain. And my concern there is that some marketing, I think, really appeals to people on a very superficial level. And what we really want is people to commit. So can you talk a little bit about how you move from appealing to people in those 3 ways that you described, but move to something that's really a deep commitment and not just a spontaneous positive reaction?
Right. I think it's, I mean, the things I was talking about, what I was highlighting was these are the things that make stories particularly relevant because they tap into the things that are effective for convincing people of something. And I go back to the quote at the beginning that marketing really is the audacious, I forget exactly how it puts it, the audacious effort of leading people to do something that you think is of value, they think of value. You get in alignment with them, and if you can communicate with them repeatedly over time about things that you share, values that you share, ideas you want to see, things you want to come happen, or changes you want to see, that too is marketing. That is storytelling. That is communicating about an end that you want to share. You know, granted, certainly some people use that, you know, as you say, superficial marketing. But I think in terms of what you're doing and other nonprofits would do, it's about aligning your goals and you know, speaking truth and the values, of course, that Rotary has about truth and veracity and all that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Thanks.
Quick question for both of you, which is that we do have clubs. One of the challenges Rotary has is that we are trying to grow membership, both in terms of the quality of members and also the diversity of our members. And I wondered if you could offer any thoughts specifically regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of social media and visual marketing. One of the things that I was listening to today in another forum, which kind of struck me, and I thought it was really interesting, was that in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you should reach out and showcase organizations that are diverse, whether they're community organizations, whether they're businesses, other organizations around you that reflect diversity in a way that you admire and that you hope might be incorporated into your particular Rotary club. So I wondered if either of you or both of you could speak to that idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion in social media and in visual marketing.
you want to go ahead and go first, Courtney?
Sure. I think what you were listening to about incorporating those messages is important, and not just saying we value diversity in our clubs. Is you do need to show that, but if you don't have the diversity, then with its members, then you have the diversity in your messages. And so I think kind of to bring in, people kind of think about marketing sometimes as bad. as, manipulative, or you're just trying to sell me something, but it really is an emotional response to something that you see. And that is not, it's not superficial. It's really that's where the commitment comes from, is from the emotion, from the storytelling. And if you're really wanting to work on equity, diversity, and inclusion, then that starts with your messaging and the works that you're doing and the community projects. And are you being inclusive in those projects? Are you really, how is each club working to educate themselves in the language of inclusion and in the topics of social justice? And you start there, and from those places is where true, authentic diversity, inclusion, and equity will come from. And it really starts with educating each individual person and club, and then extending out. And that's how I see that on social media. And I see that a lot with my clients. My clients will say, we need to be more diverse. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for their business? Because it doesn't always mean the same thing. And so understanding what it means for you as Rotarians is where that begins.
Thank you, Courtney. That's really interesting and a great perspective. Paul, do you have anything to add with that in terms of visual marketing?
Yeah, I don't know if this is so much visual, but it's the larger issue. There's another great phrase Seth Godin has that I think is really great. And he talks about how from the day we were born, for our entire lives, we're all motivated by one question: is, do people like me do things like this? And I think that is really at the root of a lot of things. So you need to show people that you do the kinds of things they're interested in. And if you're wanting to show people of a diverse background that you do things they're interested in, you have to be showing you're doing things that they're interested in. And I think the interesting thing about Vermont is we are not very racially diverse, but we're very economically diverse. And I think appealing to those two different layers of society and ways to show that you are interacting at, things that are of interest to them, that may be a point of focus. But I think that's really what it is. It's kind of like the marketing thing. You need to show it to sell it. You need to show people you're doing this work they're interested in, for them to engage in it, for them to, but if you're just showing that you're, like some things, not some high and mighty, anyway, you're not going to be relatable. That's all it is.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing another hand, but let me ask another follow-up question. There are folks on this call, as I know there are many folks in Rotary, who hear the word social media and say, that's beyond me. It's beyond my experiential sort of, existence. It's beyond my capacity or capability. I don't see myself functioning in that realm. Where do they start? Where do those folks start with their Rotary Club trying to take advantage of the opportunity to tell stories, to show what we do, to show Rotary in action, which is one of our branding messages? Where do they start, Courtney and Paul?
I think they really need to start with finding someone who is wanting to be a part of the social media Rotary Club experience. Because, and I see this all the time with my clients who will be like, I'm going to make my employee do it. And if that employee doesn't want to do it, doesn't care, isn't on Facebook, it's not going to work out. It's just going to drop down to the bottom of their to-do list. And so if the club president or whomever is in outreach isn't into the social media, then it's up to them to find someone who is. And let's say there is no one in the club who wants to do it. Then maybe now's not the right time, or it's really about identifying the lowest, the easiest thing to grab. So what can that be? Is it Facebook? Is it just posting once a week about something awesome that's happened in the community? Trying to develop a strategy. And I say that, I use that word very loosely, just like an idea of something to post and trying to make it a habit.
Thank you, Courtney. And Paul, any thoughts?
The only thing I would add to that and I'm sure Courtney believes in, but didn't touch on, is that whatever you do, you need to be consistent. You can't post once a year unless that's your schedule. But you should figure out what's realistic, and I think you probably need to commit to at least doing something once a week, because otherwise, if you don't post on social media, people don't think you're alive. So you've got to have something that shows some pulse, some social media pulse. And
Thank
that's
you.
hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say that when I was club president now 4 years ago, one of the things I did was I got my daughter involved, who then was a high school student, to show me a few things. And so if you have a grandkid or a son or daughter who's a little more sophisticated on this stuff, definitely, tap into that wealth of knowledge and experience, even at their young age. So any other questions for Paul or Courtney? All right, well, I have a few minutes that I'm in. Oh, Courtney, go ahead.
Ed has a question.
Oh, yeah.
It's just sort of a comment question kind of thing. One of the things that I think is really important to do is everything. Front Porch Forum, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. We have a local newspaper. Do it all. And as you were saying, include pictures in everything you do, because they're terribly important. And it could be a little write-up on when we take food to the food pantry, okay? Or it could be when we are building a fence at the local center for that takes care of children during the day, et cetera, et cetera. And we found that it's just incredibly important to just keep that information flowing into the community so that they know what we're doing. Because every single one of us, right, all the clubs are doing great stuff. And you don't want to hide that light under a bushel, if you'll pardon me for saying that. But I had one really important question for Paul. What's your favorite single malt?
He's calling you out, Paul.
Oh, Lafrague, quarter cask.
Oh, all right, a man after my own heart. Thank you so much.
Anyone else have any questions for Courtney or Paul before we let them go and wrap up with a few other thoughts from the district? All right, well, Courtney and Paul, thank you so very much. Again, Paul is with Storyworks, his company. Courtney with Yancey Red Social Media Agency. Thank you very much for being here. Please look them up. If you want to avail yourself of the expertise that Paul mentioned, please look them up and connect with them. So thank you very much, Paul and Courtney. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to share my screen again and wrap up with a few slides. Whoops.
Carolyn, would you
Yeah.
forgive me for interrupting one more time?
Sure, of course.
One other thing that I think they're wrong to assume that we as presidents should be doing the social media stuff. I think that deserves a person dedicated to doing that. And I think finding somebody who is savvy and interested in doing that is important, because as presidents, we have too many other things that we need to pay attention to. So that would be one of my comments.
Yeah, and I don't know that either Paul or Courtney necessarily, I don't know that they suggested the president should be doing that, but certainly I agree with you. It's nice to have a dedicated person in your club who, as I think Courtney said, has the enthusiasm and the interest in doing it and is willing to engage. I think that really does help, either a committee or a person. It really does allow that continuity. It allows that, that continued promotion, which again, Rotary for many years, promotion was not a word you heard in Rotary, but we do need to, as you said, shine our light and make sure people understand what we're doing and how we're contributing to the community. Because frankly, for those who know really about Rotary, I don't know why everybody doesn't join, because it's just such a great fun time, and it's great for our communities and our world.
But I think that's the other thing. I don't believe everybody knows Rotary and what we do and so forth. I never had any idea
Yeah.
about Rotary and
Yeah.
what they did and so forth. To me, it was just like a little sign on the side of the road.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
until somebody sort of drew me into it and I began to understand what they were doing, it was just, I had no idea. So
Yeah.
I think there's a place for doing that as well as,
Absolutely.
as
Yep.
clubs.
Yeah, and I mentioned in the chat here, but the Rotary Brand Center at My Rotary, which we discussed in our first workshop, has wonderful images and wonderful visual marketing that you can include on your website, your Facebook page, you can include with your posts on Instagram. So those have some really beautiful visuals that you can use, and it's all in that branding, under that branding umbrella of Rotary International that they've created. They've sunk a lot of time and energy into that, and we might as well use it because it is there, as Paul said. So I'm going to share my screen one more time again and just get back to the PowerPoint here. I wanted to just touch base with you folks. We talked a little bit about leadership as a president-elect. And so I'm going to take my prerogative as your district governor-elect, and I'm going to switch around a little bit our next two workshops, and maybe only one workshop. I'm going to suggest that we actually transform our February 15th workshop into a discussion about leadership. I think Ed just mentioned, you can't do everything as the president of your club. So what are the strategies that you need to have as a president-elect in order to manage the responsibilities and make sure that you're enjoying your year, that you're effective in your year, and that you end up creating the kind of year that you want to create? What are your goals? So I'm actually shaking the trees a little bit and looking to get some participation from some folks at the zone level, which is the next level up from the district level. There are folks there who are trainers, they're Rotary trainers and leadership trainers. So I'm going to try to do my best to obtain someone from that level of Rotary who can speak to us a little bit about those kinds of questions. And I'm hopeful that we can cover that on February 15th. Stay tuned. I will let you know how I do with that goal. And then my thought was that March 1st, I was thinking in the terms of kind of, I guess, sports, what about a bye week? I mean, perhaps we should let you folks take a break. 4 sessions might be a good even number to wrap up. And then you'll be heading into your Northeast Presidents-elect training, which will be on the weekend starting Friday, February 4th at noon, and then carrying over into Saturday. And we'll end up finishing the Northeast Presidents-elect training and then having our district meeting after that, our district assembly right after that. So you'll be engaged on Friday and Saturday those days, that first weekend in Rotary, and doing some great things and learning some great and having some great information and training. And my thought was that perhaps we should let it go and finish up mid-February and let you sail into that Northeast Pets without an additional meeting. So unless I hear a great cheer or round of applause to have another meeting, I think that probably we'll go ahead and wrap up in 2 weeks with our February 15th meeting. And then finally, again, let's talk. So I'm going to stop the share now. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any further questions, any thoughts about our February 15th meeting, Ed, I might prevail upon you to contribute and talk about committees, so we can talk about that a little more offline. Any other thoughts about the Northeast? Yep, Spence, you had something to share.
Well, it's a question. I think you mentioned in one of our earlier sessions that we should do some preparation for the pre-pets, and I wasn't quite clear where it was you were saying we should go to do that preparation.
Yes, so there is, Spence, I don't know if you were here the first workshop that we had, but there we talked a lot about My Rotary, which is a portal on the Rotary International website that gets you to a place called the Learning Center. And the Learning Center has a number of modules, virtual modules that you can take as a president-elect. And the president-elect training module, it's essentially a bunch of sub sort of parts. It has like a bunch of very small lessons that you can take. Some of them are 10 minutes long, some of them are 20 minutes long. The total course plan lasts about 4.5 hours, but you can take it over any number of days or time periods that are convenient to you, because it's all virtual online at the Learning Center. And so that is where you would go, Spence, in order to access those learning modules. And I would really encourage every single president-elect to get on My Rotary, to get in the Learning Center, and to make sure that you take the course that's entitled President-elect Training, because that'll prepare you well for your presidency. Does that answer your question, Spence?
So it's myrotary.org. Is that where you find
Yep.
that?
Yep, and I'll and I'll offline, Spence, I'll send you, if you don't recall how to log into my Rotary, I can send you there's a sheet, an informational sheet that tells you how to do that.
I think I've succeeded, but go ahead. That would be
Okay.
helpful. Thanks.
Okay, great. Any other questions or thoughts about today's workshop or our next one on the 15th?
Sally has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I can't see everyone. So Sally, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, so I have a comment about diversity but first I have to say to Paul that Lafroig is only good for those who like peated whiskeys. The rest of us like Balvenie Doublewood.
You can tell what kind of Rotarians we have here.
So on the diversity question, somebody commented appropriately that we don't have a lot of, at least cultural or ethnic diversity in our state. It's getting better, but what our club has done addressing the economic diversity is we have actually we have made available a president's sponsorship so that if somebody wants to join our club but can't afford the yearly dues, they can be sponsored by the president. I think that's appropriate because I think a lot of people still think of Rotarians as wealthy white men. And we women are trying to change that picture, obviously, but the whole wealth question may still be out there. And so we're trying to make it clear that we want people to join our club no matter what their economic background is. And as you all know from your own clubs, everybody's got a story, everybody's got a background. And so we want all of the people who want to be part of our club and do the work that we do. We want people to be willing to join our club.
Yeah, absolutely, Sally. Great point. And you've inspired some hands. So let's hear from Lise. And then there was someone else who had raised a hand as well. Scott. So Lise, we'll start with you and go to Scott.
Sure. So I'm so glad you brought that up, Sally. I've been talking about how to get young people in Rotary, not just Rotaract, but just becoming members or participating in events and community projects. People who have an interest to do that, but aren't up for becoming members for the financial reasons. And so I'm really looking for my year as president to try to open up the door to more participation. Membership will come later, paid membership. I think will come later as they get into their world and professions and maybe start businesses or whatever. So we want to include those people. So I didn't hear a lot of ideas about how to do that, but my thought is just have the door open. When we do our 100th anniversary, my thought is to just kind of open that door and just say, just come, just join us on Zoom, come to Hula. And we'd love to hear what you have to say, what you think. And next thing you know, brainstorming happens. And so as long as that's okay, that's what I'm thinking we might do.
Yeah, it is okay, Sal. It is okay, Lise.
Okay.
You do what you feel best and
Okay.
invite in the world. I love it.
Okay.
And Scott
Okay.
had a question or a comment.
I just was going to ask Sally if the president's sponsorship, did you mean that it's kind of like an honorary member that attends as a Rotarian? And is it only for a year with no cost to that person?
Right. So what we did was in the president's budget, we budgeted $500 for, I'm not even sure sponsorship is the right word. I can't remember what we called it. But the point was that if any member of the club had someone who came to them and said, I'd really like to be in your club, and the club member said our dues are $150 a year, if the person said, oh, that's too steep for me, then we could then say, whatever works for you, we could sponsor your membership, make it that much easier for the person to be in the club. I can't remember exactly what we called it, but we wanted to be sure that anyone who wanted to be in the club would not be excluded because, and our dues aren't huge. $150 is not a huge amount of money, but we didn't want that to be exclusive.
Yeah, I would say also, Sally, that it's not for me personally, I don't think it's as much the dues that's an issue. I mean, let's be honest, you know, my daughter's 21 years old. She goes to Dunkin' Donuts every day and spends $5 on a latte. I mean, she could easily afford Rotary Club membership if it was a priority for her. But it's not the dues as much as the other things that we sometimes expect our Rotarians to do in our clubs, right? Maybe buy a meal every week, maybe buy raffle tickets, maybe, you know, contribute to the foundation. I mean, there are certain expectations we build within our clubs for donations and money demands that really cumulatively can add up to a significant amount of money. So that's something that all of us should think about with our clubs. What are the expectations we impose on our members? And are those expectations financially a little too much sometimes for people to, they intimidate people, they dissuade them from joining. Well, I do want to wrap it up. I want to respect people's time. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us this evening. Again, I'll send out a wrap-up email. If you have any questions individually, please let me know. And I will see you here on February 15th. Thank you so much, all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.